Welcome to the Danny Carlson podcast, your resource for growing the business and mindset for a life of unrestricted freedom. Now here's your host, online marketing acrobat, Danny Carlson.
What's up, guys? Danny Carlson here, and today I'm going to be sharing easily the most vulnerable thing I've ever shared publicly. And it is something to do with a relationship that I had that recently ended, that it just ended in a way that was incredibly better than any relationship I've ever had previously end. And it really opened up a new paradigm for me of how you can actually deal with these situations. And if you're looking for a very specific business podcast, this is not going to be it. But I can personally say the value that I've gotten through this process with this particular relationship is going to help me perform better at business. It has helped me get through, a rough breakup and have a really good mental headspace going through where I legitimately feel great about the entire relationship and everything like that, even though I was the one who actually got broken up with. So if that sounds appealing to you, then dive into this one. I'm going to be sharing some pretty personal stuff, but hopefully it can be valuable for you as well. So about 3 weeks ago, I got broken up with. No one likes to get broken up with. I was dating this girl for 4 or 5 months here in Bali. Really great girl, doing lots of acro, really connected on a deep level. And I felt love for this girl, and she felt love for me. And that is what made the breakup process very difficult for me, is that the reasons why she broke up with me is not because there was no love there. We still do love each other, but she is just not in a place where she feels like she can be in a long-term relationship, because she really needs to focus on growing confidence in being her own independent person, which I completely understand. I've been through periods like that in my life, but it made the breakup for me very difficult. I would almost prefer, if someone just told me, "Hey, I'm not interested in you, go away." That's just me. I just prefer that in my brain. It's easier for me to deal with. So I was pretty sad about this. All these things popping into my head, ego, not good enough, and all these things, and it was very difficult. And I was starting to feel like this, and definitely in situations in the past where the breakup just taints the entire relationship. All of your memories together, every time you think of that person, it's just something negative, and you have some subconscious level resentments built up towards them for different things, and your brain is telling you negative things about this person to make yourself feel better, right? It's almost like a auto defense mechanism. You're like, oh, well, this person's this way, and whatever, they're just like this, so I don't care what they think, right? Your brain comes up with all sorts of delusions, and the ego trying to protect itself, basically. And I really didn't want that to happen with this girl. She was great. We had a lot of really great memories together and really connected on a deep level. And I feel like I'm at a place in my life spiritually where it makes sense to put in the work to be able to look at the entire relationship in that way, right? I don't want it to be tainted by just bad memories or bad judgments. So I did the most hippie thing I've ever done in my entire life. Very, very Ubudian. And I reached out to her in 2 weeks after we broke up, and I asked, would you be open to a relationship closing ritual? Basically a closing ceremony for the relationship. And that is just looking back at it now, I don't know why this is not a more normal thing. I understand that people are usually bitter, and there's a lot of resentments built up towards it, but it was such a powerful experience that I would really recommend it to anyone who is open-minded enough. So you're probably asking what does that even mean, right? So basically the whole goal of this ritual was to just be able to leave this relationship with a really good taste in our mouths, right? No bitterness, no resentments, and just literally wishing the best for each other, right? And it was successful in doing that. So the format of this, we just met up in a beautiful location. It's up in Ubud there in this beautiful park, and sat down for a moment and just took 5-10 minutes to just voice what we really enjoy about each other, what we think our best qualities are, what we were originally attracted to in the other person, and just the best things about them. And this got us into a good headspace where we could honestly look at the rest of the ceremony and, from that place of gratitude and headspace, right? Not looking for all the things that we didn't like about the other person. And then the second step was just sharing our favorite memories together. So we sat there and just kind of reminisced on some of our favorite experiences that we shared, because we went on some really fun trips. Lots of time spent on the beach just talking about really interesting things, and we just wanted to honor that, right? Making sure that those memories were the memories that we would think of and look back on them fondly, instead of just always being triggered to come back to the negative ones. And then the final piece of it was the most powerful for sure. We shared our vision for our own futures, and then we also shared our vision for the other person's future from a platonic standpoint. So what do we see possible for the other person? What do we hope is possible for the other person, just based on, our own understanding of them? Not like in a way like trying to fix them or whatever, but in a way like, what does the other person genuinely want, and what do we hope that they can achieve for their own lives? And that was incredibly powerful. One, just like for yourself, to say your own vision for the future, that's compelling, and it comes from a place of optimism, and you can see that for yourself, but also just seeing that for the other person without you in their life, right? Is part of that process of ending things on a really good note in the brain. And I can honestly say for me that this may sound woo-woo and hippie and all that kind of stuff, but this is one of the most powerful processes I have ever been through when it comes to a relationship. I've had a lot of relationships in the past that ended on really bad terms, and this one ended on absolutely great terms. And I can honestly say that I am much happier for having gone through that relationship. I can look back on, every time I think of this person or I see this person, I can feel a sense of gratitude that we shared so many great experiences together, and we got to know each other on that really deep level, and that was a really beautiful thing. And it doesn't have to be some terrible, sad event that the relationship doesn't have to continue. I can look back on that and be grateful for having shared that with that person, and that's great. And it did a lot for me, just getting rid of a lot of the little mental things that the ego comes up with to try to protect itself. Like during the whole process, right? Like you get broken up with, that's no fun. The ego does not like that at all. It's like comes up with all these things. It'll come up with like questions like, oh, like was I not good enough for them in this situation? What did I do that was wrong? Like all these things, just like questioning your own self-worth, and then maybe even getting indignant, maybe being like, oh, well, you know what? Screw this person because like they don't actually know this, or it becomes indignant, right? And I didn't want to be controlled by those negative parts of my ego that would just come up and just desperately try to protect itself, right? Like my ego had built up such an image of, I am this guy with this beautiful girlfriend who's like all into this, and that was just part of my identity, right? And so when that identity gets changed, the ego wants to hold on to that with a death grip and just not let go. So there's a second part to this that really helped me get through a lot of those ego things. This is an incredibly, incredibly powerful process. I've done this for a lot of different things in my life that have come up, but for this one, it's really powerful. There is a woman named Byron Katie who is famous for something called the work. And basically the work is just an inquiry process. Any kind of negative thought that comes up can be worked through the work. So it's just a series of 4 questions. I got it written right out in front of me here. And I'm going to go through a live example of how I use it to help me through the mental challenges of the breakup as well. So the 4 questions in the work, you ask these in a row. 1, is it true? So ask yourself, like, really, is this thought that I'm thinking, is it true? And then number 2, can I absolutely know it's true? And this is a really powerful question because this forces you to really take a look at it honestly and be like, okay, so like I think that this is the case, but like, is there any way for me to 100% verify that this is the case? More often than not, you'll find that there is no possible way. Number 3, how do I react? What happens when I believe that thought? So this is really powerful because it gets you to realize the effects of this thought. Like, what is the cost on your life, on your mental sanity, how you're feeling? There is a cost to thinking this thought, and you need to identify that. Then number 4 is, what would I be without the thought? So that one is super, super powerful because it gets you to see on the other side, if I did not have this thought, what would I be? What is there for me to gain if I did not have this? And if you go through this process, maybe it won't happen the first time, but if you do this every day for even like 2 or 3 days in a row, that's enough to really get through a lot of these mental loops and literally remove them and replace it with just peace. So I'm going to give you some examples of we're getting real vulnerable here. So these are some of the things that came up in my brain as I'm going through this whole process of getting over this woman that I was dating, right? The ego just comes up with all sorts of nasty thoughts to think about you. And if you let them go unchecked, you're going to be pretty miserable. And I personally would choose to spend the time to work through them and just show them for what they are. That all these examples that I'm going to give you, I know are not true, but yet the ego just comes up with them and they put them in the brain, right? So here's some live examples. So the first one, she doesn't love me. I mentioned earlier that we broke up, but there still was love for each other, right? So number 1, is it true? Well, it's not true because she told me that the opposite is true. Can I absolutely know it's true? It's not actually possible to know that. You can never really 100% know what someone else is feeling, right? And how do I react? What happens when I believe that thought? Well, when I believe that thought, it makes me feel, unworthy. Makes me compare myself to other people that maybe they have something that I don't. Maybe they have some loving relationship and I don't, and that makes me feel bad about myself. And then what would I be without the thought? Without the thought, I'd be at peace. I would be much more open to sharing love with those around me and receiving love, and I would not be insecure about it. Right? And even now, going through that, it takes the power away from the negative thought. And that's so, so powerful. And I'll give you one more example here. It was all a sham. This is one of the crazy thoughts that comes up when the brain is just trying to deal with all this stuff. It was all a sham. She didn't want to be with me anyways. She was just pretending so that she could use me for other various things. It's like, I know this is not true, but yet these thoughts come up. So question number 1, is it true? I can very confidently say that it's not true. Can I absolutely know it's true? Definitely not. I will never know. Maybe it was all a sham, but I cannot know that for sure. And how do I react? What happens when I believe that thought? Well, I get kind of angry. I get indignant. It's like, how dare someone try to get away with using me and think they can just like lie and make all this thing happen, right? And that's ridiculous. Why would I want to feel like that? And then what would I be without this thought? Well, this is the most powerful one right here. Without that thought, I would be able to look back on our entire relationship and have a sense of gratitude for experiencing a beautiful thing with another human being. And without that thought, I just still feel completely intact with myself. My self-worth is not damaged in any way. I feel good for having had that experience with another human being and open to whatever else is in my life. So such a powerful process. So again, guys, if you're looking for a good business podcast, this kind of went in another direction, but I honestly believe that spending the time to sort this kind of stuff out in your life as well is going to make you a lot more effective in business. It's going to make you a lot more effective at whatever you do in the rest of your life. Right? If you're constantly letting these kind of things get to your head, it can be a months-long process, right? I've had breakups before where 3-4 months later, I still was just in a terrible headspace, and I started, drinking, and like back then I was smoking cigarettes when I was a young guy, and it just wasn't good. It took months and months to recover from this kind of headspace. But here I am right now. It's coming up on maybe a month after this breakup, and I can honestly say I've never been in a better headspace after a breakup with something like this. I honestly have a feeling of gratitude for everything that we shared, and that closing ceremony really helped with that. And this process of self-inquiry, the work by Byron Katie, really helped with that. So hopefully my experience can help you guys here. And it's a little bit scary sharing such intimate details of my personal dating life, but I hope it was insightful, and see you guys on the next episode. If you guys haven't already, please go leave a review on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you're doing it. This is a pretty new podcast, so we don't have a whole lot of reviews, so every single one of those makes a huge difference, right? One review adds like 15% or whatever to the entire view count. So you want to be one of the heroes of the first set of podcast episodes on Danny Carlson Podcast. Go leave that review. Really appreciate it, guys. And till next time, guys, take care.
Thanks for joining us on the Danny Carlson Podcast. For resources mentioned in this episode, visit dannycarlson.co.